Good morning and welcome everyone to Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center podcast. I'm here with Achyuta Gopi, and our dear Dayal Guranga is not with us today, but he's with us in spirit. He's always with us. He had something to attend to this morning, so it's just the two of us flying solo today, Achyuta. I feel like Dad's not here, and it's just us. Like that's how I feel. It's like Dad's not here with his dad jokes, and it's like we're
Great.
just here. And we're so happy to have our live audience here, Pat and Kristen, Irenka, and Lane and Kimberly and Kristen and Brej. So welcome everyone. We've been talking this week about a lot of stuff at Chuta. Well, first of all, how are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great seeing you. All of you didn't see this in our live audience, but when Achyuta first came on, there was like this like ray of sunshine. It was just like one ray of sunshine that was like directly on her slash Govinda Dev right behind her. And it was just like, this feels right. This feels
Yeah,
absolutely
and
right,
then the sun moved really fast.
as it does. So yeah, we've been talking this week about a lot of stuff, about identities and boxes and how people see us and how we perform certain roles in society and how we're showing up in different areas of society. And I really like this point that Doyal made yesterday. It's really been resonating with me, of like how it's not necessarily duplicitous to engage in different roles at different moments. And you brought up that beautiful point yesterday too, Tutor. You sent that point home of like, hey, Krishna does that actually. Like Krishna is playing different roles at different times. And therefore, if we're part and parcel of Krishna, then we're playing different roles. And something that I wanted to talk about today is building off of that. I was having dinner yesterday, an early dinner before the kirtan with two dear friends, and one of them was speaking about he's reading he likes reading a lot, and he's reading something about the Socratic method. And we were talking about Greek theater and ancient theater. And you know what I wanted to say to you, Truth, yesterday? I was just like, we would have been friends in high school. Like we 100% would have been friends because
Right.
I was such a like humanities classics geek. I was like, do you know Townsend Harris, this high school in
Yeah, yeah,
Queens?
yeah.
I went to Townsend Harris and I was like such a nerd. I was such a nerd. I was just like Greek mythology and like philosophy and all this stuff. And we totally would have been friends if we knew each other. So I
I
just
did
wanted
SA,
to
I did SAT prep at Townsend Harris.
what?
That's crazy.
Achuta, we
They're
probably
desperate
like
on weekends.
we probably saw each other. We probably ran into each other. But since we were talking about like Greek theater and we brought up this idea yesterday of like uh ancient Greek society utilizing theater as a means to kind of purge certain social ails out of society. And it was really interesting because my friend was talking about how in the Socratic method, which is a lot of like questioning and a lot of dialogue and a lot of like debate and going back and forth, there's this word called aporia. And aporia means where you've reached kind of like an impasse in a good way in a debate or in a conversation where there's been so much questioning and there's been so many good points on either side where you kind of just reach a point where you're just like, yeah, like I don't know if I agree even with my initial point anymore. Like I totally understand where you're coming from. And the other person's like, yeah, I don't really know if I agree with my initial point either, because like everything you've said makes a lot of sense. And you're kind of in this space of like, yeah, like I I I
We
guess
kind of
like
mutually can see each other's points.
yeah, we can kind of mutually see each other's points, and there's a lot of questions. Like it's this gray area. And I thought that that was so powerful because we were talking with my friend about how that like barely exists nowadays, and that kind of like reaching a place where I can agree to disagree or like understand that we have differing viewpoints and still having respect for one another, it's like very rare. And nowadays, especially in like contemporary context, we've been talking about identities and fitting into roles and boxes and this and how we play our roles in society. It's very much like, this is who I am. I play this role. And if you disagree with X, Y, or Z, or if you don't think in the same way, or if the way that you're thinking harms or threatens whatever, etc., like you're canceled. You know, like we're living in cancel culture. You're canceled. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to hear from you. Blocked, you know? And I think that that's really, I want to hear your thoughts on this, Achuta, because what came from the conversation at the end of it, like the other friend that was there, she was like, whatever happened to debate? And not like stage debate, not like the stage debates that we see, but like real, the sunshine is back, the sun ray is back at you. That means it's your time to talk. But like real debate where we're actually like respecting one another and asking questions and hearing each other out before like jumping the gun and being like, you're canceled, you know? So I kind of want to hear your thoughts on this, Achita.
I mean, and also to your point yesterday where you were saying, maybe things now aren't so different. Maybe some things are exactly the same, which you're saying, kind of feels a little esoteric, but also a little heavy. Like, well, it's the state of the world. It's all over. But this idea of real debate and asking questions, I feel like is the reason we have Srimad Bhagavatam.
Mhm.
There were some people who all got together and were like, look, anybody have a real clear answer for this? Because we lost. Like, somebody have one that everybody can kind of agree on. And whenever I hear about those debates and I see them, I always think of one particular figure within Krishna's family, and his name is Uddhava, and he's Krishna's cousin, and he looks exactly like Krishna. And he's like the sweetest boy, but he was a really good, perfect, like administrative politician and minister to have, because he was so good at finding solutions and being so flexible with them that both parties would feel happy, even if they were completely opposite parties. They both feel happy and they both have solutions that pleased everyone.
Mhm.
And some days I'm really like, okay, Uddhava, like we need help because I don't get it. And just the way of presenting our arguments in a way that is not meant to simply defeat the other side. And then, coming to the idea of cancel culture, we even see it 500 years ago. If we look at Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lifetime, there were scholars, pundits who would walk around with long sheets of paper with people's names on it, basically saying, like, I've defeated you. And if you were defeated,
Canceled.
like, that's right. Like, if you were defeated, that was your honor, that was your whole existence. And so when this big scholar gets to Lord Chaitanya, who at the time is not even 16, and Lord Chaitanya defeats him, he also does it in a way with overwhelming compassion. So the people behind Lord Chaitanya, his own students, wanted to mock and ridicule this person because they'd been defeated in this debate. And he kind of scolds them intensely. He's like, no, we don't do
Mm,
that here. Like, he tells them, I'll go home,
mm,
because he doesn't want to defeat someone so badly that they kind of lose their life over it. And there's this idea that he doesn't even want to defeat somebody so badly that they become canceled.
mm,
This is the overwhelming compassionate nature of God. Even knowing they have opposing viewpoints and they have a debate that this other person is not going to win. And that always struck me. One, because God is so compassionate, and two, because of how he took charge for how his people were going to act. So I think sometimes as facilitators, as role models, like, nobody wants to, like, everybody's like, oh, I didn't get in this to be a role model. I'm like, yeah, but you're rich and famous and people are idolizing you. Like, you absolutely did. You signed up for one half, just not the accountability and responsibility. So I think that in this being a social culture, we've lost the willingness to have accountability and responsibility, not just for ourselves, but also maybe for the few people around us who are looking up to us. And I think that's what I see in the difference between certain celebrities and their and cancel culture, is some of them having this idea of, no, I'm responsible not just for me but also for a whole group of people, so I'm going to say, and they'll be able to say things diplomatically, but I think because of people's strong feelings, they don't want a diplomatic answer. It feels less satisfying if everybody leaves happy. If no one is concretely defeated, how do we know we won? And we're like, well, that's not exactly the point. Like, the point is not always to just win and crush them. So I think, like you said, yeah, there's a lack of understanding this art of debate. Because 500 years ago in Bengal, that was the art. It was a science. It was their life. People would write dissertations on how to debate and then how to do it properly. And then still, God had to show the example. So
Mm,
I kind of feel like, yeah, you're right.
mm,
This art of debate is kind of lost, and in a way where we can separate the person from just the debate and their ideas.
mm. That's so powerful, Achita. Thank you for bringing it back to Gaura Lila, to Sri Chaitanya, because I think that that's amazing. It's like this idea that all of this stuff, or this fact that all of this stuff was going on many years ago, hundreds of years ago, in Sri Chaitanya's times, in Socrates's times. Like, these are things that have been developed by society, by the saints in our lineage, by Krishna. Everything is coming from Krishna. It's there by Uddhava. And it's really interesting, I think, as a marker for us in our daily life, when I'm starting to engage in these um I don't know, arguments or debates or whatever you want to call them, because nowadays they're not, I wouldn't call them like a debate. It's more of a, it's more of just like getting ratchet on Instagram, on Facebook.
It's the
Uh,
it's the quarrel and hypocrisy in full force.
yeah, it's just like I feel like it's such a good like measure to measure yourself. Like, wait a minute, we're trying to be Krishna conscious, we're trying to be bhakti yogis, we're trying to be spiritual here. Like, how were the saints in our lineage doing this? Like, how did Srila Prabhupada approach this? How did Sri Chaitanya approach this? How is this happening in Bhagavatam? And that really sets the standard. And I think really trying to be spiritualists, trying to be devotees, like, that's what we're being asked to do. Like, that's what Krishna conscious actually means. It's like,
Mhm.
how do I stay conscious of Krishna even in these and not even, especially in these moments where my lower tendencies are going to be stoked and poked, because that's what's happening in those Facebook wars. That's what's happening in those Instagram wars. It's like my lower tendencies are being stoked and poked, of like, come on, here comes envy, here comes anger, here comes self-righteousness. Because a lot of this stuff, I really love this point that you brought up, of like one of the sides not feeling satisfied, or either side not feeling satisfied if someone doesn't win and someone doesn't lose. Like, there has to be a clear winner and a clear loser. And that's like very lower tendencies, because, or lower self, right? Because we were talking about Prahlad Maharaj the other day, maybe yesterday, 2 days ago, of this spiritual vision of just like, actually there are no friends and enemies. Actually, this is all just, our materialistic vision and our mind dividing people up into categories. And the soul has a specific nature, and it has an eternal nature. And that's the same for someone that you categorize as an enemy and someone that you categorize as a friend. And that's like huge. Like, that is very huge. Like, the fact that our bhakti tradition is saying the nature of the soul is the same for the person who is quote unquote the enemy and quote unquote the friend. So we can think about our current contemporary, situation. There are lots of people and politicians, and I'm sure people in your life, that are like, there's, they're my enemy, they're evil, they're this. And it's like, they have Krishna in their heart. The nature of their soul is still eternal and bliss and joy and wanting to be a servant and wanting, it's like, wow, like when we really start to believe that, and not only believe that, but see the example of our lineage, like Sri Chaitanya, that's such a beautiful example in Gaura Lila, of like, he's not trying to ridicule these people that he's defeated. It's like, okay, this is, this is like, he's showing us the example. And it's like, that just doesn't exist anymore. And I feel like it gets really what's the word I'm looking for? It's very much like pandering to our materialistic tendencies. And I think, like, for us as spiritualists on a daily basis, I say this for myself, it's like, okay, I am in this situation with like whatever issue that's going on, that's the new issue of the day. It's like, how am I entering this domain? Like, am I entering it in a way of like friends and enemies and this person versus this person? Or am I entering it in a different way? And I'm going to give a concrete example. I hope I don't get canceled for this. I'm going to give a concrete example. um, in the LGBTQ community, I feel like there's a very like I was making this okay, I'll start this way. I was making the funny remember this thing I brought up with a person reaching out to me to like give a statement or like talk about something on a podcast.
Mhm.
And I was saying to my friend, this is the friend who they said was the negative version of it. I was like, you know what? You know what this person really wanted to say, but they didn't say it. But this is what they were saying. What they were saying was that I was the model gay, right?
Yeah.
And you're the problematic gay. You know,
Yeah.
you're the problematic one, and I'm the like model one, right? We've heard of this model minority thing.
Mhm.
And it's so interesting because it's like, okay, when you move into or when people start seeing you as quote unquote problematic, it's like, what does that actually mean? You know, and how am I willing to enter into a dialogue about that or not? Right. Because in this issue of LGBT, which I'll try really not to go down the rabbit hole too much, but you know, there are things that I myself have found like quite problematic with my community, you know. And I remember with like some friends of mine that I've had since I was a teenager, I would like before when I was a little bit more challenging. Now I'm less challenging. I'm not really into it so much, but I was just like, this is an issue and this is an issue, and I don't know about this. And they would like call me so many names. They'd be like, you have internalized homophobia and this and whatever, and you're just like whatever. And I'm just like, no, I just have like maybe a different opinion from the norm, and like let's talk about it, you know. And it was like, no, you're canceled. And I was like, okay, whatever. And then we would talk about it at some other point, being like, maybe you did have a point. Maybe I should stop doing these things, you know, these like self-harming things. I'm like, maybe we can talk about it. And it's like, where is the, you know, that's an example, but where is that as spiritualists, where is that line? And we've been talking about this week, like when keeping it real goes wrong, it's like, where do I step over the line to be like, yo, this is a problem, you know, this is an issue, like let's talk about it, or just like la 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 whatever, you know, you're living in Maya, so I'm not going to get involved, or I'm also living in Maya, so like whatever. Because I think this is another issue. I've brought up so many issues, but it's like, where where do we, and I want to really hear from you, Chita, about this because I feel like you have so much experience about this. Like, where do I see worth in putting my debate energy, in a sense of just like, hey, let's really talk, because it requires energy to do that. And because my experience sometimes is you get a little like, I don't know, indifferent,
Mhm.
spiritually indifferent, spiritually jaded, just like, okay, whatever, it is what it is. And it's like, I don't think that's the best place to be. I'm not sure. So I kind of want to hear from you about this. Have you ever felt spiritually indifferent or jaded or just like, whatever, I'm not getting involved in this?
Oh, all the time. All the time. Every other day. That's why I'm also like spiritually indifferent to Facebook because I feel like so much of it, I'm like, nope, I've seen too much of you people. But yeah, I feel like it's that idea of having an election ballot, right? And you've got a candidate with all these things, and you might only agree with one or two or three, and then they've got seven things. You don't agree with the rest, but you can only tick one ballot. You can only choose one. And now we're doing this thing where if you've checked that ballot, they're like, so you agree with all the things? Like, I feel like when Tulsi Gabbard first started running, all of the Vaishnavs in the world were like, that's it. Savior of the earth. Here we are. Like they were ready to compose Bhagavatam verses, okay? Like, here we go. This is our time. And then like it came out to a thing and it was like, so are you saying, Tulsi Gabbard, that you agree with abortion? That's what you're agreeing with. Oh my God. I'm like, or she's part of a whole party and she has to deal with an entire party. Like, and that's the party's views. It doesn't have to be her views. Like, how do we put this whole thing on this one person? Nope, she's affiliated. That's it. So like once you get affiliated with a certain group or a certain sect, then it's like, nah, that's all the things. Like I just heard recently that there was a deranged person, an emotionally disturbed person who had broken into Harry Styles' house, right? And then like broke a vase and did all the things. This person happened to be a Hare Krishna. So the comments looked like, oh, this is not a good look for ISKCON. I was like, Or if some crazy Christian broke into his house, we'd be like, oh, this is Christianity's fault. Like, how do we take this and put this all on? It's like this has nothing to do with our, like, this person chanted Hare Krishna. I have no control over what they do or their mental state. Like, this does not have bearing on that. So I'm constantly asking, does this actually have any bearing on me in my life? Like, what does this do? And then I kind of look at it, I was like, okay, now what can I do? Like, there have been instances of abuse even within a spiritual community, even within this spiritual community. You get, and so, like, people are like, oh, well, you're still gonna be affiliated with that community. I'm like, are you still living in America? Because there are horrible crimes and atrocities committed in America every day. So you gonna stay? Like, nobody's absconding. Like, nobody's giving up their citizenship. Everybody seems like they're trying to make it work from within. So I feel like we need a little more of that to understand that, like we said, sometimes the ideas and the person and what they are doing are different. And we see this especially with Srila Prabhupada. He'll present a standard within a book because the books are there for perpetuity. And then how he would act with his disciples, it's crafted personalism. It's different. It's compassionate. It's appreciative. It's accepting. It's loving. And so he would show love in different ways to all of his disciples. Now we read a book and then we see something problematic, and then we're like, nah, Srila Prabhupada was racist. That's it. I don't know. And I'm like, whoa, how do we get there? Did we see how he actually treated his disciples? Did we see how he treated people? Then are we actually reading what he wrote? And not just, okay, this one sentence. Read the whole paragraph. Read the whole page. Read the whole collection of verses and purports to find out, okay, where's this person coming from? We've lost the personalism in favor of just taking a snippet of an idea and then identifying somebody with this whole snippet of an idea and a whole thing. Like, I'm like, and like you said, you've got this idea of a model minority or a model, portion of this one section. And everybody, if you think about it, your own race, your own country, your own whatever, you're like, oh yeah, I can agree with this or this, but it's like, but yeah, no, I can't agree with the rest of that. Like, are we supposed to say that all the, like, what if there are some people that are just stuck in places and they're kind of victimized just like you, but we are not willing to see that, nor are we willing to extend that compassionate view to anybody else. But we will make excuses for ourselves. Like, it's always different when it's us. But for other people, they have to live by this stringent, rigid standard that half the time they don't even know that they're living up to. So yeah, I can look at myself as a Black person and still say, well, there are a lot of issues that Black people have. But also there are a lot of issues that white people have. It's people. There are issues that people have. And what you said was absolutely, absolutely correct. Can we look at the most atrocious people in history, the Hitlers, say, and come to the realization that, oh my God, there's a Krishna that was in their heart the entire time, still traveling with that soul wherever that soul may be. That Krishna has never given up on that soul. And I'm not saying we have to agree or disagree, because it depends on what's best for our mental health, but at least we can acknowledge how amazing Krishna is, that there's still a Krishna in that soul. That Krishna didn't give up on that person. So at the very least, even if I don't agree, I could put that over there and realize that Krishna's not going to give up on me.
I feel like I'm in a sermon and I'm just like, preach, preach. I'm thinking of this verse from the Bhagavatam, Bhayam Dvitiya Binaveshatashyad, Ishada Pitasya Viparyayos Smriti, that the main problem of life is that we are turning away from Krishna and that we are forgetting him. And I think that that's so powerful, because to know that there is divinity in our heart that will never abandon us is extremely powerful. Like, I feel like that's such an extremely powerful idea, that like no matter because I think that there might be a misunderstanding here. You know, some people will hear this. I've heard these questions so much of like this Hitler example or evil people example. It's like they still have to pay the consequences of what they've
Oh yeah.
done. You know, like they still have to pay the consequences of what they've done, whether it's a criminal in society or like whatever, or someone who abuses someone else. Like they still have societal things to face, but Krishna's still in their heart, and they still have divinity inside of their heart. You know, if we look at, it's so interesting. You know, this is a whole nother conversation, but I'm not so learned on this. But what all I know is that the the prison industrial complex in this country is called that because literally it feeds in, it's basically like modern day slavery, like it feeds into corporations and how things are produced. and
Mm-hmm.
and the little understanding that I do have of this is that the underlying philosophy under the prisoner system in the United States is not one of like healing and reintegration into society. It's not. Whereas, like when you look at other countries, like more progressive Scandinavian countries, their models are based on healing and reintegration into society.
Hmm.
And so it's really, really interesting, like how as a society we like actually look at people and we see potential in people. Because like if we're going back to what we were talking about, cancel culture is the idea that like once you've affiliated yourself with, like you were saying, Tulsi Gabbard, or once you've said something that other people are deeming, you know, morally, societally incorrect, like you're done. Doesn't matter that you're part and parcel of Krishna. It doesn't matter. None of that matters, right? Like you're done. Therefore, that there's no avenue to reintegrate or to reclaim or to like, you know, clear your name or something like that. Like it's just like you're canceled, you know?
Yeah, it's like carrying forth the idea of like eternal damnation.
Eternal damnation. Yeah, eternal damnation. Exactly. And it's like eternal damnation is not a thing in Bhakti philosophy. It's like, you know, you gotta pay the consequences, you gotta go through your
I
karma, you
mean,
know.
sometimes it takes a long time, but it's
Sometimes
not
it'll take a
eternal.
long time. Sometimes it'll take a really long time, but the opportunity and that verse that I mentioned, the opportunity to turn towards Krishna is always there. Like it's always there, no matter what, no matter how, whatever mistakes you've made, how, you know, dark it's gotten, how far you've gone, whatever. Like you always have the opportunity to say, what, you know what, fear, you know what, darkness, I'm done. I'm going to turn to you, Krishna, the light, like the sun that was shining on Achita Gopi and Radha Govinda in the back. And I think this is so powerful because you were mentioning one thing that I wanted to speak on, and then I want to hear from Kimberly. But it was this thing about like, oh yeah, I remember. It was this thing about like people seeing us as representatives for X, Y, and Z, right? So it's like Tulsi Gabbard is now the representative of all Hare Krishnas who are wanting to go into politics, or just all Hare Krishnas in general, right? Or Jita Gopi is representatives of all Black
I know, right?
people that grew up in Queens and that are, you know, it's like I'm so all of a sudden to represent. It's like you don't know, and I'm sure you've gotten this too, Achita. You don't know how many, and then people will come to you like asking these questions, Srila Prabhupada or this or whatever. I'm sure you've gotten this too. I get so many messages from people being like, how are you like involved in this? You know, Srila Prabhupada is homophobic. And I'm like, have you like read any, you know, like where is this coming from? And I'll always ask people. And the most interesting thing is that with these people, I don't cancel them because I could be like, you're homophobic. You know, why are you talking to me? Like, this is crazy. Canceled. I'm not talking to you. And I enter into dialogue with majority of these people and I share to them about what you spoke, right? Srila Prabhupada has a way of saying things on the Vyasasan very officially, very according to the book. And then the way he treated his devotees and a personalism that is devoid, you know, we don't have that so much nowadays, was very different.
Mm-hmm.
And 99% of the time when I speak to these people that are coming for me, it turns out okay. Everything's fine. They're like, oh, wow, oh, okay. Like this is changing things, you know, like
Yeah.
I had no idea, you know, amazing, interesting.
Yeah.
And I feel like that personalism is really missing because last thing, and then I want to hear from you, Chuta, and then I want to hear from Kimberly. Last thing is when that personalism is not there, you know, I can imagine, and I've been to those places, and I'm sure a lot of us have, darkness, you know, like when I feel abandoned or I feel like I wasn't treated in a certain way and no one's checking in on me personally and whatever, all the negative feelings, right? It's like you can turn away from the light. You can go to the darkness, you know, and just like, and I can imagine those people who went to really dark places in history. It's like, yeah, it makes sense, you know, total indifference, total darkness, total depression,
Mm.
total sense of abandonment, total sense of nihilism and cynicism, like nothing makes sense, whatever. It's like, yeah, I can see how it can spin down that way. You know, it's like it's not like that's totally unimaginable. And it's like, okay, if I can imagine that, then that means there has to be, or at least we're trying for there to be a sense of compassion and understanding and
Mm.
seeing, like we were talking about, like, there's a soul, there's a sense of healing, there's a sense of reintegration, as opposed to like, you're representing all Germans and you did this, you're canceled and all Germans are canceled. It's like, no, that's extra, you know? You represented Chutagopi, all black people from Queens. You said one wrong thing, they're all canceled. You know, it's like that.
Yeah, I have encountered that a lot. Like I got a message once and somebody was saying, they were like, "Well, I I don't know what happened, but they were somehow holding me accountable for all black people in this Hare Krishna movement, and they somehow found me lacking. And then they wrote me for the first time to tell me that they had like canceled me. And I was like, well, why'd you write me then? Why didn't you just cancel me? Go about your business. Like, it could have been easier for everybody. You didn't have to type. I didn't have to read. But what I started with, I was like, well, where's this coming from? Because you've never spoken to me. We don't know each other. And what they said was, oh, I had no idea that you would respond. Like, you're such a big person. Like, I didn't even know if you would read this. And I was like, so you sent the harshest thing you could send? You sent all this negative energy to somebody you didn't think would read it? Why are you spending your day spewing this? And I'm really about negative energy, right? I was like, why are you demoniacally just like spreading your poison everywhere? Like, and remember, I was talking about this idea of looking at what we disagree with, and really saying, okay, but why am I disagreeing? Somewhere along the line, somebody made me feel some way, and now I disagree with a certain point. Usually, if we're just disagreeing and we don't know anything about it, it's so haphazard. Like, it's like, well, why do you disagree? I don't know, I just don't feel it. I'm like, well, that's ill informed, like, at all. But sometimes when we have such strong, strong feelings, we feel a certain way. We've had experiences with certain people. We've had things that have left impressions on us. And it turned out that the majority of people who normally come to me and they're like, what do you think? Srila Prabhupada was a racist. And I'm like, well, you've never met the man, so why are you so angry? There's something about this that's angered you. Oh, well, I had a temple president and they treated me like this. I'm like, so your problem's with your temple president, not with Prabhupada. If they're using Prabhupada's words, that's one thing, but your problem really is with your temple president. Changing a book and all that stuff is not going to change the people who have decided that they want to oppress others. They're still going to find that way. So it goes also back to people saying, but you're saying there's a Krishna in their heart that excuses all their activities. Like, no, I didn't say that.
Mm,
And those people are not going to use God as an excuse. And if they do, it's an excuse because horrible people are going to do horrible things
mm,
with or without God. They were
mm,
doing it and they didn't know God was in their heart. I'm just stating a fact. God
mm,
is there.
mm,
Like, it doesn't give them the excuse. It doesn't change like their mindset. If their mindset was working in such a way, then their mindset's going to work in that way.
mm,
And material nature will handle it. Absolutely.
mhm,
But also when we're looking at, I'm like, okay, what's your real problem? You've
mm,
never met Srila Prabhupada, so what's your real issue?
mm,
Somebody along the way somewhere did something to you. Who hurt you? Like,
mhm,
that's usually my question. My question is like, who hurt you? And why are you coming to me? Like, what happened? Because we don't know each other.
mm,
And asking those questions usually gets a much deeper answer for me. Trying
mm,
to find out, and like you said, it all comes back to personalism. Really asking the person, what is it that you're feeling? Because this is, and usually it comes from something else. Well, I grew up with a religion that did this, and I'm like, okay, well, but there's some key differences here. There's some big differences here. There's some similarities too, because people, but there's some key differences.
mm, Thank you so much, Achita. That's so powerful. Like looking underneath the surface that's coming at us, I think, because at the end of the day, I think it's really powerful to accept the fact that we've all been hurt in one way or another. We've all been hurt, and that's gonna do things to us. It's gonna trigger us. It's gonna make us
Yeah.
defensive and build walls and be reactive and whatever. And we all deal with it in different ways. And so I think that when we can approach when others are coming for us, because it will happen, it's like, how can I, as a practitioner, be like, okay, what's the bigger picture here? Like, this person is obviously going through it, whatever. And it's like we can also try, in a sense of like, I love the way you handled that. And I also try to handle it in more compassionate ways, because if we're canceling the people who cancel us, it just it just turns into like, oh, you're canceling me, I'm canceling you. They're
Yeah.
canceled. There's no space for that compassionate debate, for that understanding. There's no space for them maybe starting to understand, like, hey, Krishna's in my heart. Hey, there's divinity in my heart. Hey, this person that I canceled, all of a sudden they're being nice. What? This is so weird. It's disarming. We could keep talking about this forever. It's such a good topic. But I want to hear some takeaways from Kimberly. If you're there, Kimberly, are you there?
I'm here.
Yay.
I got the art of debate has been lost. We got to learn to mutually hear each other out and see each other's points. The nature of God is overwhelmingly compassionate. Krishna is never going to give up on our hearts or souls. The opportunity to turn towards him is always there.
So powerful. Thank you so much, Kimberly, for those amazing takeaways.
Kimberly,
Yeah,
you do an amazing job. Okay.
I know, right? Like that's I was like,
because we say a lot of things.
and thank you all so much for tuning in. We're fresh out of time. We went a little bit over, but I think it was worth it. And we take a break on the weekends, but we'll be back Monday morning, and Dayal will be with us on Monday. We missed him. Thank you all so much for being here, and we'll see you on Monday. Haribol.